to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
And I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics on the show are going to range from theology, masculinity, movies, philosophy, books, pop culture, and many other subjects. We'll be talking about the people we admire and the wisdom that they share. Standing on the shoulders of giants, people such as Ben Shapiro, Thomas Sowell, Megyn Kelly, Tim Ferriss, Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast, Joe Rogan, Ryan Mishler from the Men of Order channel, Candace Owens, Tim Pool, Larry Elder, Gary Vaynerchuk, Barry Weiss, Will Jordan of the Critical Drinker channel, and Mike Rowe. Basically everyone over the Daily Wire Plus, and especially from Jordan B. Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. Michael, how's it going?
Great. Let's just get into it. We're talking about the Book of Eli today and the Bible in general, right? Starting out, spoilers. If you haven't seen the Book of Eli, we are going to spoil that for you. So
Book of Eli is a 2010 film starring Denzel Washington, and it was directed.
Produced it. I didn't notice that. Yeah, he produced it. So and Denzel's very, very Christian in. To be honest, I don't know his religious beliefs, but it seems that he is very Christian.
Yeah, it's a rare thing in Hollywood to see religious people, but from everything that I've read about him, he's always been very religious. I think he's been married to the same woman all of his life. He's not had divorces. His kids seem well-rounded. His son's a star in his own right.
To his credit, when the whole thing went down with Will Smith, walks up during the Academy Awards and smacks Chris Rock.
Yeah, smack her across the world.
So it's to his credit. It kind of seems like in a crazy world, he has been kind of a little bit of a voice of sanity in all of that shit that went down. So he apparently, because Will Smith got up and talked about it, but he apparently went to him and basically said, listen, when you're at your highest is when the devil tries to take you. And Will Smith said that when he was receiving his award. Right. And we're not here to talk about Will Smith and that whole debacle. But to Denzel Washington's credit, I think, of like him going and talking to him and kind of having to come into Jesus with him.
Yeah.
Pun intended, I guess. But
and Denzel Washington's been working for a very long time. He's been a major player in Hollywood probably for better part of 20 years, probably even 30 years. He's had a long career. He even directs a few films. This movie is directed by Albert Hughes and Alan Hughes. I think they're twins. They're the Hughes Brothers, as how they are known with their credits. They directed the From Hell, another comic book adaptation about Jack the Ripper, starring Johnny Depp. This movie, one of the reasons we are discussing this movie is because it's one of the rare Hollywood movies that isn't about like telling the story of the Bible, but it is about the Bible. And because you and I are talking so much about the Bible, I suggest this movie because the whole time we're talking about Exodus, I just keep thinking, man, this is the only movie that I can think of that Hollywood produced that actually has like a positive message of the Bible and a negative message of the Bible.
Because and we can get into it, but there's a part where the bad guy played, I refer to him as the boss sometimes in the show, but that's Gary Oldman. Yeah, played by Gary Oldman, and he does a great job. But he wants the Bible for control, and we can talk about that. We both being raised on a polygamous compound, we can understand the idea that
of control
religion can be used as a tyranny, right?
as a controlling mechanism for people. And it's used a lot, and that's what's great about this movie is it's representational of the two sides to what the Bible can do and what the Bible is, right? And
Yep.
so I let me just read the summary before we get really into it for people. So this is a 2010 film, so a lot of people didn't see it. It was kind of a flop at the box office.
Let me speak to that, because I think the reason,
let me read
Go ahead.
the synopsis. A post-apocalyptic tale in which a lone man fights his way across America in order to protect a sacred book that holds the secrets to saving humankind. That's IMDb's depiction of it stars Denzel Washington, Mila Kunis, Gary Oldman, and Ray Stevenson, and Jennifer Beals of Flashdance fame. And it was directed by Albert and Alan Hughes, the Hughes brothers. I think they're twins. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so I think possibly, and I'm just speculating here, but possibly the reason it didn't do so well was, I mean, one, it's not one of the big box office. It's not the Avengers it's none of that, which it seems like nowadays the mid-level made movie kind of gets forgotten nowadays.
Well, it's not being made anymore. The mid-level movies were like under 100 million, essentially. Yeah. And they hardly get made anymore. I think the ones that I can think of that came out this year were like Everything how do you say that? Everything Everywhere All at Once with Michelle Yeoh and the kid from Goonies. Did you ever see that?
I didn't. But really Critical Drinker talked about it. Yeah, and he actually talked to this point about how we are starting to see the disappearance of the mid-level movie.
Yeah.
Where it's either all out big box office hit, or it mainly goes to television, and we're really seeing. And he's saying it's a bad thing because there's a lot of directors and producers and movie makers that basically cut their teeth on the mid-level so that they can get into the bigger stuff.
Yeah.
And
what happens is they have really micro budgeted movies now that are like under 100 million or under a million, and those ones are like really they're like art house films. And they're the ones that end up becoming Academy Award winning films. Nobody's watching them though, because they don't have a budget to like get them out. So they're very rare to see. And the mid-level movie is essentially dying. It's dying in this. So what we have are huge movies that cost, small, huge fortunes, 250 million. I think Avatar's in movie theaters right now, and I think it cost, they're not really releasing it, but reports are saying that it costs $400 million to make. Which is just nuts.
Jeez. So the reason I think that this may have not done well is it's a very dark Christian movie. It might be too dark for a lot of Christians, and that's because it's so pro, God and the Bible, that it may have been too dark for Christians, but then also too Christian for Hollywood. So it may have actually kind of been right in that place, which, I mean, our brother who passed away loved this show, and he was a Christian that had like tats all over he was kind of the edgy Christian, not pious in the sense. This show, there's basically they don't have a full on rape scene, but there's basically like some dark scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and they say the F word like throughout, so it might have been just a little too edgy for the Christian audience.
Crowd. Yeah, the Christian crowd. So it didn't do well. I remember liking it when it first came out. I saw it in movie theaters. I didn't think it was the best movie, but I did like it. I thought it was okay. And revisiting it this time around, there's just a lot more to it than I originally saw. And like we said, we're gonna be spoiling this movie, and the reasons for doing this are just essentially we're doing a lot of stuff about the Bible. We've been learning more about the Bible with Jordan Peterson. And because we're big movie buffs, we tend to think of like, when we're doing stuff like this, like what other what movies pertain to what we're doing. And there really isn't a lot of movies about the Bible. I mean, everybody can say, like the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, which was such a huge hit. It's probably been 15 years, maybe 20.
Did pretty well. In preparation for this, I kind of went and watched some of Jordan Peterson's psychological significance of the Bible,
mm-hmm.
and he starts out that series with he talks about the Bible, he talks about God, but he talks about the Bible being kind of, in a sense, the structure of reality, of our reality. So it's the cornerstone of how our world is kind of built up, and it really goes back to just the history, how our nations were built, and things like that. But he mentions, he has a long soliloquy on dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this show, and I wonder if this show isn't better appreciated almost as if you were watching a dream, right? And sometimes maybe
it's got a dreamlike quality to it, right? It's like a
throughout, yeah, kind of a nightmare, but like dream, yeah,
dreamscape kind of. It's like got a gray tone to it. I think it looks beautiful. It's beautifully shot, and it's got this gray tone to it. There's a lot of sky, like gray sky shots. It's really beautifully shot. But I get what you're saying. You're thinking that it might have like a it feels very much like it's kind of a nightmarish, more of a maybe metaphorically kind of film rather than based in any kind of reality.
Yeah, maybe metaphorically speaking kind of film. And like,
mm-hmm.
When I first watched it and it first came out, I remember somebody telling me, and this, I mean, we obviously did talk to spoilers, but apparently throughout the show, he's blind the entire show. And you find that out at the very end, and it's kind of this moment.
Twist.
It's like a
twist. Surprise.
Yeah, kind of a surprise twist. Well, if you think about it, if you're trying to think about it like anchored in reality, it kind of just doesn't make sense. And I had a guy, he was just like, yeah, but he's like shooting at people and stuff. Like, that just doesn't make sense. But if you think about it as kind of a myth or a dream, right? And Jordan Peterson talks about the Bible being kind of almost like a collective dream over eons of time, a collective dream that we've all kind of that's evolved with us and helped us grow society, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost feel like the show makes more sense, and if you approach it as kind of a myth or a dream, then it almost makes more sense to to the viewer.
I really liked the twist at the end because it was something that I didn't see coming. And when you watch it a second time, you can actually pinpoint the parts where he's acting blind, but it's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be subtle because you're not meant to know that he's blind through the entire movie. Which
Yeah.
I
It
mean, it stretches reality, I guess you could say, a little
yeah.
bit. Basically, because how could a guy, I mean, and he does do this a lot through the movie. He turns his head because he's listening to the people. He's not looking at them. So
Right.
he's listening, and he always talks, he always says, like, he can, like, at the very beginning. So the very beginning, there's this great action sequence where there's what do they call it, a honeypot, where they've got a woman who's in distress, and then there's a bunch of guys that jump him, uh and he can smell them, like he
Mm-hmm.
knew that they were all there, and he knew they were
Yeah.
going to try jumping him. So I mean, it's like it's like when you're watching it and you don't know that he's blind, um this is one of those movies that you it's probably best the first time around because you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But
When you're
what
rewatching it,
when
you
you're
start to
rewatching, you
kind of
start to
notice things.
notice
Yeah.
all the little things that because he never says that he sees anything. He's always listening, and he never says, and he always says he either smells or hears something.
Mm-hmm.
So like when
Yeah.
him and so Mila Kunis's character are walking down the street, and he goes, "Do you hear that?" And she's like, "Hear what? I don't hear anything." And he sits there for a little while, and then he shoots the bird out of the sky. He's just doing it like, and it does stretch credulity, like it stretches your
Yeah.
reality. But then if you go into the whole idea that maybe God is guiding him, then
Th-
then
yeah. They push that a little bit, where it's God was kind of telling him where and when and how
how,
through
yeah, through
throughout.
all. So is
Right.
so
So
and this is one of those movies that like stands on the shoulders of other great movies, like the what do you call it, Mad Max movies, which I think Mad Max kind of brought this in the Road Warrior and the first Mad Max movie. They kind of
post-apocalyptic shows are
brought in this
kind of,
genre.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
they weren't a
it's very
thing.
similar. They're looking for, like, everybody needs water. Like, that's
Yeah,
kind of the
or fuel,
uh
water or
theme.
fuel.
Yep, yep.
So so that's what this movie very reminiscent of. And and so it's 2010. It's a 13-year-old movie. Do you think that a movie like this ever gets made today?
We might start to see a resurgence into things like this. If so, in the show, that there's a premise in the show which
The movie.
basically says, in the movie, that there's a premise that all the Bibles are gone. So they've lost, they he mentions that people just went, they they seeked out all of, I don't know if that's the right word, seeked out, they suck
Yeah.
out, they seeked out their the Bibles to destroy them, because they thought that the major war that brought all this desolation was caused by the Bible.
Yeah.
And so they destroyed their, like a Jordan Peterson would say, the structure of reality. So they destroyed that thing that had helped build nations to that point. And let's be honest, we we are enjoying a reality that's based in Judeo-Christian and maybe Greek, uh, uh,
Telos.
Greek Judeo uh, telos. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the Greek telos theology.
and his Jordan Peterson's big thing is that, and the Nietzsche says this, that God is dead, and Nietzsche was just stating. I've heard Christians. There's even been Christian movies made that God is dead, or God is not
Is not
dead.
dead. Yeah.
The show, which I enjoyed those films, they were great, but it's based on the premise that Nietzsche said God is dead, and
Well, and Nietzsche was lamenting it. He wasn't like he wasn't
he was
thinking this
pointing
was
it
a
out.
great thing. He's like, we've the rest of the quote isn't the rest of the quote. God is dead, and we have. I can't remember the rest of the quote.
The streets will run with blood.
Yeah, or it's something he's
Basically.
lamenting. He's sad that we've killed God. Now he was an atheist, but he also knew the importance of religion in people's lives. And that's one of the things about this show that we're doing, is that maybe this is something that's very interesting to me, and it's a little bit of a tangent, but there's a famous writer. His name was David Foster Wallace, and he did a commencement speech at a college. And in that speech, he talks about human beings do not choose if they worship. They only choose what they worship. And this was never more evident than for me, when Game of Thrones ended. I was obsessed with the show. I loved the show, but it ended on a really poor note. There were not good things about the last season, and like across the board, everybody hated it. Now there's some outliers out there that probably think it's great, but the thing is that the show ends, and it's like the internet melted down. There were so many people pissed. They were getting they were trying to get signatures, like doing a petition to try to get HBO to reshoot the entire last season. And I remember thinking, this is a product of people not having a religion in their life. Because I was disappointed, but I have a little bit of religion in my life, and so I wasn't obsessed with it to the point where I got tattoos of it, or where I was naming my kids Khaleesi. There were people naming their kids Khaleesi. We're going to see a whole generation of kids growing up named Khaleesi. And what was sad about it is that that's what it was. It was people had glommed on to this, and this happens with all fandom. When they don't have a lot of religion in their life, they're replacing it with something. This happens to people who are obsessed with sex. Sex becomes their religion. This happens to people
who politics,
or politics is a big one, because they start seeing these people as the saviors of their world, but they don't. But there's God. You could try that, but we've as a society have moved on from religion, because it's like, I don't know, not hip to be a religious person. It's a pejorative, essentially. And so when we have pop culture do movies like this, we should try to support them as much as we can.
Yeah. And that's really the start of the show, is everything has fallen apart, and ultimately because everybody has killed God, killed the structure of their reality, society, and now it's post-apocalyptical. And it starting out, it just shows like he kills a cat so he could eat a cat, and he meets the honey. What'd you call it? Honey.
I think it's called like a honey trap, where they
Honey trap or
basically
something like that.
use a woman to try to lure people in, and
Help
then they
me,
have a
help me.
help me, and then they
And
have
then
a
all these guys, he kills all these guys, and it's too. And I don't know if we want to get into this much, but the lady that tried to lure him in, she's like, "Oh, all my protectors, all my men are dead. Can I go with you?"
and he's like,
Right? It was,
no.
yeah, it's just nope. So, but it was just showing, and people, yeah, feminism nowadays. I've heard this said that if the zombie apocalypse were to happen tomorrow, you would see feminism completely disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And it in a sense now this girl, unfortunately, she wasn't of a frame of mind to be able to just take care of herself, and you do see some girl power in this show, which I support and love. It was great. They did it well. You know, the Mila Kunis
Yeah,
character
Mila Kunis.
learns
Yeah.
Mila Kunis learns from Denzel Washington character Eli, and and grows from that, right? But I didn't want to skip over the fact that it is showing that these females, these girls in the show, have, like, when the structure of when the structure falls apart,
Women
it's
are the victims of the structure no longer existing.
really shitty. They show a guy get killed, and this girl gets raped, and he Denzel
Well, and
Washington characters kind
that's
of,
the arc of the Denzel Washington character, Eli.
it
So
is,
his arc is he's so focused on keeping the book from anybody because he's afraid of people destroying it that excuse me, that he's not following the teachings of the book. And he says that at the end of the movie. He's like, I was so obsessed with keeping it that I wasn't following its teachings.
yeah.
And so he doesn't intervene in this murder. So there's another scene where there's two people walking along the side of the road, and a biker gang shows up, and they murder the man and they rape the woman. Doesn't get into too much graphic detail, but it is very sad because he doesn't he's hidden away and he doesn't intercede, and we as viewers are like, go help her. You just kicked a bunch of other guys' asses in the previous
Yeah.
scene. Go help her. Go help her. You know, that's what we're thinking. And he's going, stick to the, what was he saying? Stick to the
State of the path. State of the path.
state of the path.
And
So,
just like
but
go
he,
keep going to find a home for this Bible.
well, and this is like modern day Christians. They'll preach when they get to church, but they won't. And this is really bad in the LDS world. They'll preach when they get to church, right? And they'll follow the rules and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to people outside of the church, they're very non. I can't put it all like them all like that because that's a generalization, but a very big majority. One of the big problems with the LDS church for many many years is that because they thought that they were the only true church and the only people going to heaven, is that they didn't really make any efforts to try to help people outside of the church, you know. And it's very evident when you live in small communities, like people will say, oh yeah, they're LDS or something like that, and you'll realize, and it's like shorthand for, oh yeah, they're only concerned with the people in their own church. You know, they're only gonna, you know, there's several businesses in the community that I live in, they're owned by prominent LDS people, and they only are good, their employees that they're good to are all LDS. So it's a very like in crowd, and this is the problem, is that he's walking away. He's walking away from this poor girl being brutalized by this biker gang, right? He's not going to intercede, and that's not what you're supposed to do when you're a proponent of the Bible.
I was just the other night listening to a Tim Pool podcast. They were live. They were talking about Andrew Tate and just the state of the world. And
we should say who Andrew Tate is. Not everybody's going to know.
Well, if you don't know, you can 10 seconds on Google, you would find out
real fast. He's a social media guru, and he's been arrested recently, and he's very controversial because he has very old views on the femininity and masculinity. So continue, Michael.
Well, and he got canceled anyway. So, but Tim Pool he was talking about this, and he looked it up about the story of the gal that got raped on the train, and no one interceded.
What city was that in? Did he say?
Philadelphia, I think.
Okay.
So he was just like, this is kind of the state. This is the state of the union. This is how this is going. So this return with Jordan Peterson, sometimes I wonder, are we kind of in this place where this, and it's funny that just last night before I watched Book of Eli, I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about this. So it's interesting that it's almost happening in real time. And that might be why we need this return to the Bible, right? This might be why this is needed right now. Tim Pool and his other panel were all talking about why in the world is it that no one would intercede. This girl was getting raped on the train and no one would intercede. Well, there was a lot of they were talking about maybe some reasons. Basically, things are bad enough that if someone had interceded and killed the guy that was doing the raping, let's just say they had a struggle and they killed a guy, right? Or whatever the case may be. That person who could get prosecuted with manslaughter.
After he saved this woman.
So there's a lot of people, they're just like,
it's not my problem. It's not my
problem.
I'm not going to get involved.
I'm not going to get involved. And then he talked about a guy that was, there was a reporter in New York, and there was a kid that was by themselves, like lost. And this reporter saw the guy, and he's like, he kind of looks at the kid, he looks around, and he's like, all right. And he walked away. And she went to the kid, and she got some police, and they went to go find their parents.
So the reporter called the police and everything, but she had already seen somebody see the kid and walk away and not do anything.
She was able to catch up to this guy. So she catched up to this guy, and she asked him, why didn't you do anything? And he was like, if I stuck around there too long, I could have been
prosecuted of taking the kid.
Of being the perpetrator of taking the kid. So I just washed my hands of it.
Yeah.
So
and I see that. So I this is interesting. This is interesting thought, because I go to, in the summertime, I'm always taking my kids to different parks, right? Because the same park is always a pain in the ass. So because it's not interesting. So I'm always taking my kids to different parks, right? There are children who come up to me and want me to help them with things. Like these are not my children.
Yeah.
My children, I'm watching my children. I'm just standing off to the side. My children come up, they want to play with me sometimes, and I get involved. But there's other children that want to do the same with me, because I don't know what it is. I'm a figure of authority. I do not know what it is, but they are not being watched by their parents. And so the attention that they want from me is bizarre, and I'm not comfortable with touching them or being around them. They're not my kids. And because I see the same thing, and
I'm not going to push them on the swing.
I'm not going to push them on the
swing.
I'm not, that's what they want you to do. They want you to be involved like you are involved with your children. And it's like, but the law would come after me if some parent saw me at the wrong moment. If some parents saw me picking their kid up and putting them in a swing, then I'm screwed. Even though I'm not even there to do. So I don't. They want me to, and I'm always kind of like, no, maybe you should go find your parents. Like that's kind of how I get out. I weasel out of it, but it's like there is no
I saw a
upside.
comedian. And he was talking. He's just like men and women are not the same. They are not the same. When any of you people came here and got a babysitter for your children, who of any of you picked a dude? None of you.
The truth. None of you picked the dude babysitter.
None of you. So the idea that any of us that anyway. So we digress, but it just made me think about, and the arc for Denzel Washington character is that he doesn't intervene in this rape, but then he does intervene with a rape down the road, and also he saves the girl, the Mila Kunis character, and he does do it at the peril of the Bible, right? And she asked him, "You protected the Bible so long. Why would you do that?" And to your point, he says,
"Well, and it's a character arc, so he's not engaging in the world anymore. He's just keeping this Bible safe, where he's not, and in the process of doing that, he is not following the teachings of it. Protect the innocent, protect or do what's good, the 10 Commandments, the Sermon on the Mount, that sort of thing. Well, and he actually says, he actually quotes it at some point. He says, it just tells everybody to treat people like you would want to be treated.
Right.
Which goes back to the do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But anyway, what's really also great about this movie is the action scenes. There are 3 prominent action scenes in this movie that are really good, and they actually hold up pretty well in comparison to what we're getting nowadays. So if it's a 13-year-old movie, and everything we have now is almost all CGI there. And I could point out a lot of CGI in this, but the action scenes themselves seem to be very well choreographed, and Denzel Washington may not do all of the stunts, because I don't know, he's probably, if I had to guess, he's in his 50s. He's in his 50s by the time this movie is made. But the first one, where it's just the silhouettes of talk about an amazing action scene, where the guy has the chainsaw and he's coming. So that, like, it's just a really, really well put together action scene, and it's pretty much in one shot. It's just silhouettes of one guy fighting off, what was it, 5 or 6 guys. It's pretty dang good.
And in
really
the bar,
awesome.
There's the bar scene, and the camera is going around as him. And it's actually really cool. Like it's well done. And
there's in my notes I put, there's a huge amount of Western influence.
Yeah, Western influence.
American Western influence. There's a ton of that in this, because in those movies they come into the dusty town and they're a stranger, and this is all tropes that is used in this movie, which is really, it's really well done.
He's beating the crap out of everybody, and Mila Kunis character comes out and stops him. So there's probably a little bit of a Beauty and the Beast kind of thing going on there.
Well, even though there's no romance between them, which I think is good.
There was not a romance. It's better that there was not a romance between them, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But he is just beating the shit out of all these guys, and he's about to kill somebody, and she just is like, just please stop. right? So that kind of goes back to the beauty that tames the beast a little. So so I thought that was fun.
There's a lot of killings that he does that he doesn't need to do.
Yeah.
So like at the very beginning, the first guy that talked to him at the very beginning, he comes up to the guy whose hand he cut off.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to kill this guy. This guy's pretty helpless, but he just kind of just looks at him and stabs him. Which is, and then he's about to do the same thing later in the movie when the Mila Kunis character says, "Oh, no, don't." And the guy on the ground was already defeated. He was just going to take it one step further. So there is this motif of maybe a little bit of the divine feminine in this, and this is what we tend to talk about. So
yeah, there's a part after he kills the first fight scene where he kills the group of marauders. He kneels down
and he says a prayer.
And it's his silhouette. Now I got the impression that they were doing the kind of night. It was like a night kneeling. So I don't know if they were kind of going for the kind of white knight
hero
visuals.
Motif.
Yeah, hero visual there. So I don't know if you had a thought on that, but
he's got a sword, so I mean there is that. Who knows? I don't.
I thought it was kind of cool to see that and to see that. Well, but even if he were the White Knight, it would be throughout the show. It's kind of a battle between him being basically a White Knight or a Dark Knight, right? Or a bad character, bad knight. So
and I do like the way that they express it. So they know nobody ever says Bible. I don't think in the entire. Well, no, there's one through most of the movie. Nobody says Bible. They just say it's a book. And Gary Oldman's character is a character who's running this town, and he wants the book because he thinks that he can expand his power through the religious teachings of the book. And Gary Oldman plays like the guy is brilliant because every movie he's in, he's always different. He's always different. Like he just in the way he acts. And he's really smarmy in this. Like he's just kind of a creepy, smarmy dude.
Yeah.
And because literacy is almost non-existent in this world, he has the power because he can read, and he wants more power. And with the Bible, he could probably and this is what is great about it. So a few weeks back, we were talking about the abolishment of slavery doesn't happen without the Bible. But also keeping slave going was also because of the Bible as well, because the slave traders used it as an excuse as well in their interpretation.
And us growing up on a polygamous compound, we have definitely been able to see the tyranny of religion. So, and I think that's what they were trying to depict, is a freedom aspect that comes from the Bible, but then also a tyrannical aspect that comes from the Bible. So
with the Gary Oldman character, they're pushing he's going to use it for nefarious reasons.
He's going to use it to be a tyrant.
And the Denzel Washington character is learning from it and gleaning wisdom from it, which it's all subtly done. And it's so well subtly done that this is it's amazing to me that this movie was even made. And it might have been made just because of Denzel Washington's religious beliefs, because
Mm-hmm.
if he's this big star and he's got these religious beliefs, then he um then he has the power to make a movie like this.
Yeah.
And I don't think, honestly, the way Hollywood has kind of conducted itself in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, especially during COVID, um there nobody's uh, so nobody's
Nobody's doing
interested,
this.
nobody's doing
Yeah.
this. And so, but here's the thing is, I think people have a hunger for it, audiences, because
Which
there's always this duality between the audiences and the people who make the movies. Because I think so, Babylon just recently came out. Have you heard of this movie?
mm-mm.
So it just recently came out, and it's being held as a major flop. It stars Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, which are both people that I like watching movies of. But the problem is that it's about Hollywood decadency in the 1920s, right? We just came out of COVID. Do people want to see rich people doing decadent things after experiencing a couple of years of really rich people doing decadent things, and the people who aren't rich being told to stay indoors?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right now. Yeah.
there's a huge amount of hypocrisy that Hollywood pushes,
Is
and
is pushing.
that's why this movie flopped, because everybody was like, I don't want to see that. I don't have
Yeah.
any desire to see a bunch of vapid celebrities pat themselves on the back for making a movie about other vapid celebrities.
I don't know.
So
We could see a resurgence of movies like
I think we're in the
Book of
turning
Eli.
of the tide, right?
Maybe.
Because what's happening,
We'll see.
because with that flopping and a bunch of other movies flopping this year, people are actually voting with their dollars, like you said. Like people, like the movies that people want to see, if Hollywood doesn't get on board, they're gonna lose. It's may end Hollywood altogether, because people are not into what they're pushing anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this last year has seen that. Uh, do a shout out to Gary with Nerdrotic. He does videos on this subject matter, and he'll go into deep, like he actually does research. He's got analytics that kind of show like what so She-Hulk was a flop, even though Disney won't admit to it. The Rings of Power were a flop, even though Amazon won't admit to it, because they don't want to admit that they missed the mark on both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And people aren't interested, and especially if they watch a few episodes in and they're like, "This is dumb," or I'm not into this." But
Which is why I say we might see
resurgence,
a
yeah.
resurgence of the kind of traditional um, roles and traditional movies coming back. Could be wrong. It may never be the same, and
Yeah,
it might be the end of cinema as we know it. I think
entertainment,
we
yeah.
we are seeing it probably go into television
Mm-hmm.
versus going into big movies.
Yeah,
The Terminal List was awesome.
yeah.
And so we might see. And I don't know the stats or anything, but I think Terminal List actually did really well. Isn't that
Yeah,
right?
according to, I think Chris Pratt said something about it being the number one show on Amazon for a few weeks or something like that.
Right. So we
But
might we might see
you
that.
can't always trust what the filmmakers or the people involved in making it do,
Yeah.
because they also, I mean, Amazon Prime also claimed that Rings of Power
Yeah.
was a success, and Gary, the Gary from Neurotic channel, he actually did a deep dive to find proof, and he went into like all the different places that actually rate movies, like IMDb and stuff like that. And he's like, there's no way that you have 1,300 people saying that they loved it, and then you've got 13,000 people saying that they hated it. He's like, there's no way this was a success. He's just kind of doing breadcrumb,
Yeah.
analyzation to see.
But if all of those 13,000 watched it, it may not matter that much to. I mean, I don't know. It may not matter that much to Amazon as long as people watched.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
which is why I didn't watch it.
Yeah, me neither.
Voting with my eyes.
Voting with, yeah. So, with this, it is rare to see any kind of positivity towards religion in mainstream Hollywood. And I applaud Denzel Washington for taking that chance, even though it's a 13-year-old movie at this point. So
did you catch this phrase when Mila Kunis is trying to leave with Denzel Washington, and she says, "I hate it here," and then he says, "Then change it."
Oh man, that was so good. Yeah, I caught that.
Did you catch on to that? I was like, "Ooh, interesting." I just thought that was kind of cool.
It's just very interesting. Yeah, it is. Why don't people change the situations they're in instead of?
And I think sometimes that change is to get out, right?
Yeah, to get out of your situation. Yeah.
So I think that she wasn't wrong in wanting to leave. I don't think. But there is this idea that you can run away from your problems and your problems won't come with you. Whereas the change has to happen right here.
Yeah.
Right.
That's an interesting way to see it. I remember, growing up in the small town that we were in, there was a group of a family that we hung out with a lot, and the girls were always complaining about how much they hated it there. And I was like, and they had moved from somewhere else that they hated. And then, and I remember and before that they had moved from somewhere they hated. And I thought, well, there's a pattern here. Like, if you guys keep moving from different places that you hate, then maybe it's you guys. Maybe you guys are the problem.
Right.
maybe you shouldn't just, maybe you should try to change. But that's an interesting observation for Eli to make when he says then change it. So that's
and we will probably someday do a deep dive on the Kingdom of Heaven, but and I want to say that the Orlando Bloom character has a point where he said he's like, I don't want to be here, and they put him in this just godforsaken place, and he kind of shows a little bit of a kind of a Joseph of Egypt mentality. He fixes where he's at.
Yeah.
He becomes industrious. He gets water to where he's at.
They start irrigating.
He fixes and uplifts the people there, and anyway. So there's you can leave, but there's also, we all
improve where you're at.
Like you can improve where you're at. Yeah. So I kind of love that little exchange. There's another exchange with the bad guy of the character, the antagonist, and his man says it's like he's being protected somehow.
Yeah,
that's a little tip of the hat to a God that's protecting him, a higher power that's protecting him.
Yeah.
But the boss says he's just a man. He's just a man. And I stopped and thought about that for a little bit, right? Because if you think about it, you know, like Moses was just a man,
Yeah, Moses was
right?
just a man.
And we're going through the Exodus story with Jordan Peterson and his panel,
Mm-hmm.
where they talk about how there's a call where God calls someone, and this happens a lot throughout the Bible, which is God calls someone and they have to answer the call and go do something that's extraordinary, but in all cases they are
Just men. Yeah.
just men or
Yeah.
women. Don't
Yeah,
nobody
it's
needs to
not.
forget Deborah in the Bible, right? She's just a
Well,
woman.
well,
So
and we've past talked about all the three heroes of the first couple of chapters of Exodus are
all
all
women.
women.
They're
So
all women. Yep. So it's just a man, just a woman, and a lot of people are like, well, what can I do, right? I'm just one person, right?
yeah.
People don't realize the power that as an individual they have.
Hmm.
You can change the world, and it may not be the name and lights that you think or that you want, right? If people can approach it in humility.
Yeah. Well,
But
what's the
you
quote?
can become the savior of your own world, the
What's the
hero of your own story.
Yeah, what's the quote from Jordan Peterson is if we all individually um is it if we all individually do better, we all collectively flourish.
Right.
If we
And
all individually do good.
Joe Rogan will say, like a call out to men to be the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Andrew Tate, love him or hate him, he has said to men kind of the same thing. And
Yeah,
he may get
you have to get
indicted.
out. Yeah. You have to get out. Like I don't
Work out,
work out,
better yourself, learn to
read
make
books.
money. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's
I
all.
love that. He's just a man, but he's also the man of the story that's going to change the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I found it interesting that the people like they subtly talk about cannibalism, right?
Yeah.
And in a world where you can't grow anything and everything's kind of just basically shit. Um, I don't know. Like this is what people fear is that that's what's going to happen. Like we're going to destroy our planet so badly that we will start eating humans. And it's interesting that they get the shakes. Now I don't know if that's possible when you're doing cannibalism, but that's how they determine if people are cannibals. There's from the shakes. They got like
Oh, is that why they kept
that's why they
asking him to
kept
hold his hands
asking
out?
holding his hands out.
Oh, I
They
did not catch on to that.
Yeah. So there's
Interesting.
like
I did not know that.
subtle things. I don't know if that's scientifically true. If you eat, I mean, I'm not looking to find out, but um, so this I forget when the book came out, but do you remember The Road by Cormac McCarthy?
The Road. Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
ever read
I saw I didn't read the book, but I
you
saw
saw
the
the movie?
show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the book is really good. I only ever watched the book, but the book was so intense and sad and really depressing that I just never had a desire to see the movie. But that's what The Road by Cormac McCarthy is about. Is about this father and son going over a wasteland, and it came out. Shoot, it's been 15 years probably since that book came out. But every so that's, I believe that one of the inspirations for this movie is that also that book is because everybody's turned into cannibalism.
Well, isn't that kind of almost like a mythological or yeah, like a mythological sense of why zombie movies
are a
are
thing.
they're kind of a mythological uh, story of if everything were to go down and people were to start eating people, then
Yeah,
in a sense they would be
the
the
zombies.
zombies,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
it's a trope throughout The Walking Dead. I want to say that there's other zombie shows where that that was the case. That was the case in The Road.
yeah,
I think in the post-apocalyptical trope, a lot of people, that's kind of the horror that they throw out in some of these stories of that people start eating people.
yeah, yeah.
And and
Well, and that's why at the beginning they're doing the honey pot honey pot trap or whatever it's called, is they're trying
yeah,
to get him, because even after they take all of his stuff, they're gonna cook him up and eat him too. So I mean, it's a trope. I don't know if people would really resort to that right away, but you can. One of the themes of this movie is man's inhumanity towards man, and one of the things that stops that is the Bible, right? That's one of
yeah,
the things that
a higher ethic,
higher ethic.
an ethic that's outside of ourselves, that that but also kind of binds us, right? And I it does kind of worry me. It does kind of worry me that a lot of people, I've heard it said that a lot of people, they're just like, well, if I was starving and you died, like I would, it's protein. Protein's protein. I would eat you. And I never liked that at all.
Well,
I
that's
felt
what the
like,
road is about. The dad in the road, and spoilers for the road. The dad in the road keeps telling the kid, "You got to carry the torch," because what has happened is all of society has become cannibalistic, and him and his boy are the only two people, like that's what he's claiming, it are the only two people who aren't eating other people, right?
yeah.
So he's going, you got to keep the torch going.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, some point in the halfway in the book, they find this bunker that has a bunch of food in it, and that's like their salvation. But but they're starving in the process of just going. And while it is, that's why it's called the road, is it's just them going down the road hoping to find food,
Yeah.
but and then everybody that they encounter is actually eating other people. and
Right. And
and
I think all religions actually have a standard that you do not eat human flesh. I
yeah,
believe. I want to say even the Hindus, I think all of them do. So, and I could double check on that, but and I believe that the idea of having a moral that you would never eat human flesh, because even if the person died and then you eat their flesh, it does not become a huge stretch that if 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 we're both dying from starvation, then I should probably just kill you
yeah,
so that I can live
because
and
then
I'll eat you,
then
right?
you're
It just
losing your humanity, right? You become just a beast, and you're just gonna eat. You're just gonna just do what is basically there to survive,
yeah,
and that even happens in The Walking Dead. I mean, there's even a point where Rick, his son's getting taken away or something like that, and he has to resort to absolute barbarism to get out of the situation.
to
And he
save his
even,
son from being,
yeah,
they were going to rape and eat his son, and
yeah,
then he ends up biting the guy's neck out because and because he has to do it to save his son. So it I mean, it's a little interesting because they had to they had to show that Rick was able to be a monster when he needed to become a monster, right? That was, I think that was the whole point of that.
But then
portion.
when are we as bad as the people who are eating other people?
And that's
For
kind
survival.
of the throughout the show, it's almost a trope through it, because he's got blood all down his face, and he just, ate this guy's neck out like a zombie. So who's really the Walking Dead? The zombies
or
them?
Yeah.
And that's throughout the show, which made it an interesting show, because they were always kind of on this line of, are we as bad as the things,
the zombies
out there, the zombies? Yeah. So, which I think is a trope in the mythology of zombies anyway, is that are you somebody that would consume your neighbor to save your own skin?
Yeah.
Right. And that flies in the face of the Jesus kind of call to people to treat their neighbor, to love their neighbor as themselves.
That's what he says in this. He at one point she asked him, well, what does it teach? And he says, well, it just teaches that we should be better to other people, or we should treat other people like ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, that's like, so the metaphor of all of that is, that's why the whole place is like shit. People aren't rebuilding society. They're just all surviving. They're all taking from other people. It's basically chaos. So the movie ends with him getting it's Alcatraz. They basically, he finds a community in Alcatraz, and he recites from memory the King James Bible.
Because eventually the boss got the Bible.
Yeah.
And
the Gary Oldman character,
and he
takes
it away.
So
freaks out because it's in Braille.
It's in Braille because he's been blind the whole time. Yeah.
And so,
I mean, it's a great twist for a movie, I think. And if you're a religious person, you're going to like it, because you're going to go, oh, God was helping him the whole time. Because there's no way a blind person's going to seem not blind, unless God is unless he's got some higher power helping you through. And that's what's so great about the ending is that it's basically saying, well, that's what was happening the whole time, is God was just helping him through.
But also the point where he recites the Bible from memory. So it goes back to that he's just a man.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a man phrase,
mm-hmm.
is that, well, he's just a man, but he has the law of God written on his heart.
Yeah.
He has the word of God written in his heart. So he recites the whole Bible, so that they have a printing press there at Alcatraz, and he recites the whole Bible so that society can begin to rebuild with the Bible. One thing I did not like, there's a point where they print the Bible, and they grab the Bible, and he's got one, and he takes it and he puts it on a shelf with a bunch of other books.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt like that was a little degrading to the Bible, in that the sense that it's just another one of the books.
Well, he's putting it with other religious books, right?
I don't know. I couldn't tell what the other books.
I paused it. So there's the Torah and there's the Quran.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And
I
then
get that.
there's like the books I've never really heard of, but I'm assuming are like famous analyzations of the religious texts.
Right.
And I
Okay.
can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but he puts it right between the Torah
Probably
and the
John
Quran.
Locke. There's probably like some John Locke in there and stuff or
I don't know. It
something.
might be fun to go
Yeah,
back and look at it,
and see.
but I did notice that the Torah is on one side and
And
the
the Quran,
Quran
Quran is on the
is
other
on the
side.
other
That's
side.
cool. Okay, so maybe that's a little bit. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, that's
Okay.
interesting because now they have a library of religious books, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we may say, so the reason the Bible is so prevalent to us is because it's basically helped create the entire Western civilization. And that's what this movie is saying, is that it can help to reestablish that security in the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So very interesting. And did you so I found the bad guy not really getting his comeuppance at the end a little anticlimactic, I guess you could say, because the wife, or not the wife, but it was Jennifer Beals. She basically just looks at him, and by the way, Jennifer Beals looks great.
Yeah.
I think she's pushing 60 at this point. But she was actually in the Mandalorian, I believe.
Oh, was
She
she?
she plays a small character in one of the bars. You know how in one of the bars there's that girl that has the long tentacles that come out of her head.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She plays one of those characters. Anyway, so uh all she does is she just tells him that it smells like your wound is infected, and that's pretty much how he dies. And he looks out into his civilization that he's built up, and he's and it's falling
And it's
apart.
fallen apart. So
So you
what
could
could we
say,
read into that?
well, you can read
Yeah.
into that the Bible, they didn't get the
It,
Bible because the
yeah.
Bible's in Braille and nobody's can read Braille. And she refuses to read Braille because she's blind too. But she's blind, and she's like, "Well, it's been too long. I've forgotten it."
Yeah, but I think that was more just that
She
she
was
was telling
taking the
him
power
no.
back. She was taking the
Yeah, she
power
was
back.
keeping the power out of his hands,
Yeah,
and he wanted to use the Bible for control.
yeah. Well, and
And
that says something that his town is falling into chaos, right? Because now he
right,
doesn't have control, and he's
right.
weakened. He's weakened, so everybody's taking advantage of it,
Yep.
and so
So the
that go.
tyrant, when the tyrant has a weak moment, Jordan Peterson talks about this
Yeah, we
when
talked about this a
chimpanzees
couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
chimpanzees will, if there's a tyrant that's their leader and he has a weak moment or a bad day, the two subordinates that are half his size
We'll take him out.
will, or three quarters his size, the two will take him out. And so when the tyrant has a weak moment, yeah, they'll get taken out,
They'll get taken out.
which is
That
why a lot of tyrants will become uh what is it, they become, they can't trust anyone, and so they are kind of freaking out all the time, afraid that somebody will betray them. And so they have to like this, Hitler did this, as well as Stalin would do this. They
they would
basically,
often kill their subordinates that were
they're
close to them because they knew
closest
that
to
they
them
were
because they
looking to
were
take
afraid.
over.
They were afraid, and I can't remember for sure, but I want to say that sometimes they were killing them when they really weren't. There was no evidence to support that these people were trying to overthrow them. They just got paranoid And
and there's some evidence, like Valkyrie is about the assassination attempt on Hitler, the
oh yeah,
failed assassination attempt
yeah,
on Hitler. So I
yeah,
mean, it is very much it is very much a thing. They'd be paranoid about it, but it was there were people trying to do it, because when you've got a tyrant, what are most people trying to do? They're trying to take them out.
yeah,
That's why Jordan Peterson's claim that our society isn't based on power, it's based on reciprocity. And that's what people need to remember. We're not we should not be a society based on power. And that's what this movie was about, is he was trying to get the book so that he could use the words to elicit power and keep power from or well to just
yeah,
rule with power,
yeah.
essentially.
And I mean, we and I can't remember exactly what I said about this, but basically, because we grew up on a polygamous compound, we know that there is religious tyranny that can happen out there. People that will use their scriptures to control you,
Yeah.
right? And be a tyrant to you. So we've been there. So I've seen the both sides of that. The good king, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the tyrant king.
Mm-hmm.
So and and I think that's kind of the motif to men and the call to men in this show and in other movies is to be the good king, right? We while back we talked about, you know, Gladiator
Mm-hmm.
and Braveheart, where they show that very very well, the contrast between the good king and the tyrant.
And the tyrant.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so that's a and in our own lives it's a line down every man's heart to become the good king or to be the tyrant. And
Mm.
the call to greatness by God, by the Bible, is to be the good king.
Mm-hmm. Which is why it's good to have that higher power. So people should be
Yeah,
subordinate to the words in the Bible, not subordinate to human beings,
yeah,
right?
yeah. There's a there should be a higher power above and beyond the king of the time, the
Yeah.
president of the time, the
Yeah.
leader of the time. There should be a higher power that's outside of them that all of us are supposed to look to, and that power at that the powers that be at the time should always be held accountable to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that can be the law, that can be the Bible. I mean, but our laws were basically kind of derived out of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So we are the substructure of our society really does have we have a
debt to the
thankfulness that we need to have to the
Bible.
Bible. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. A debt to the Bible. Well,
Yeah.
that's an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
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 cool.
thanks for listening, audience. We appreciate you coming along this journey for the Book of Eli. It's just one of those rare movies that Hollywood doesn't make anymore, that kind of you know, good characters, good action sequences, and maybe a higher message. They don't really make a lot of religious movies anymore, to tell you the truth. 1950s and 60s were kind of full of religious movies, but lately, in modern times, there's not a lot that are made. A lot of them are made by Mel Gibson, which
Yeah.
seems, Hacksaw Ridge I would say would be a religious film.
Mhm.
But
The
yeah,
Chosen has been really good. So if people like to watch religious shows, I have enjoyed The Chosen. So
I have
that's
not delved into it yet, but I see it a lot, advertised a lot. So
I believe you can download the app and watch it for free. So maybe with ads.
just a side note, that show did actually better. They released it into theaters. It did better than most Hollywood stuff when they released. They released the first 2 episodes of the 3rd season in theaters, and it did better than. Oh yeah, it did. Daily Wire reported on it.
Yeah.
That it did. That it was like 3rd at the box office.
Wow.
And it was like right before Christmas. It was like a few days before Christmas.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, I should have gone and saw that. So
yeah.
So there are some things that are going on. There's a lot of people that want to have this return to the Bible. So and that's why we talk about Exodus, and we're talking about Jordan Peterson and talking about all these things. So
okay,
thanks for joining. Yeah, follow us on Instagram at the Brothers Random, Twitter at the Brothers V Random, YouTube at the Brothers Random.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Did you already say the Instagram?
Instagram. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So
all right, brother. Keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, keep learning. We're out.